Rosie stopped breathing. Jake Mercer felt it before he saw it. His daughter's body went limp against his chest. 5 years old, burning with fever, silent. "Rosie," he shook her. "Baby, open your eyes." "Pa, she ain't." Caleb's voice cracked. "Don't." Jake pressed his ear to her chest. Nothing. Then a flutter, weak as a moth's wing. "She's alive. Lord help us. She's still alive." The blizzard screamed around them like something hungry. Chend. Before we continue, I'd love for you to subscribe and follow this story to the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far Jake and his children's journey travels. Now, let's get back to that killing storm. "Pa, what do we do?" Eli's voice cut through the wind. 8 years old, shaking so hard his teeth clicked together like rattling bones. The boy had his mother's eyes brown and too big for his face, and right now, filled with the kind of fear no child should know. Jake pulled Rosie tighter against his chest. "Caleb, the wagon." "Wheels gone." Caleb jumped down into the snow, disappeared up to his thighs, fought his way to the front. "Axles cracked clean through. We ain't going nowhere." "Can you fix it?" "Pa, I can't see my own hands in front of my face. Even if I could." Caleb's voice went thin. "It's split in two. We'd need a blacksmith." Jake closed his eyes. 15 miles to Rock Springs. 15 miles through snow that was falling so thick the world had turned to white nothing. Temperature dropping every minute. His daughter burning up with fever in his arms, barely breathing, and no way to get her to help. Hannah, he thought. "Hannah, I'm sorry. I'm failing them again." "We walk," Jake said. "Walk where?" Caleb was back at the wagon snow, coating his hat, his shoulders, his eyebrows. "Pa, we could walk straight off a cliff and never know it till we hit bottom." "We stay here, your sister dies." The words hung in the frozen air. Caleb's face went whiter than the snow, whiter than anything Jake had ever seen. "Get your brother," Jake said. "Hold hands. Don't let go for nothing." "Pa." "Nothing, Caleb. You hear me? Not for nothing in this world." Caleb nodded once, reached into the wagon bed and pulled Eli out, the smaller boy wrapping his arms around his brother's neck. Jake watched them for half a heartbeat, his sons, Hannah's sons, the only good things left in his broken life. Lord Jake prayed silently. "I ain't asked you for much since you took her, but I'm asking now. Show me the way. Please, show me the way." He stepped into the storm. The cold hit like a fist, like 100 fists, like every bad thing that had ever happened to him decided to happen all at once. His shoulder, the one that had caught Confederate lead at Antietam, screamed with the old familiar pain. His lungs burned, his eyes watered, and the tears froze on his cheeks before they could fall. "Stay close," he shouted, but the wind ripped the words away. They walked. One step, another. Another. Rosie's weight in his arms grew heavier with each step, or maybe his arms grew weaker. Hard to tell, hard to think, hard to do anything but put one foot in front of the other and pray. Caleb fell. Jake's heart stopped. He spun around, saw his eldest son face down in a drift, saw Eli trying to pull him up, both boys struggling against snow that wanted to swallow them whole. "Get up!" Jake couldn't go back. If he stopped moving, he'd never start again. "Caleb, get up." Caleb struggled to his knees, to his feet, grabbed Eli's hand and kept coming. Good boy, Jake thought. Good, brave boy. They'd been walking for what felt like hours, probably minutes, maybe less, when Eli spoke. "Pa?" The boy's voice was strange, quiet but certain. "Pa, look." "Can't stop, son." "Pa, there's a light." Jake turned, squinted into the white hell that surrounded them. Nothing, just snow and wind and... There, a glow, faint and golden, barely visible through the storm. A lamp in a window. "I see it," Jake breathed. Lord Almighty, I see it. Is it real? Caleb's voice shook. Pa, is it real, or are we seeing things? Only one way to find out. Jake shifted Rosie in his arms. Come on, stay close. We're almost there. The homestead materialized from the storm like a prayer answered. Small cabin built low against the wind, smoke rising from the chimney, and that beautiful blessed light burning steady in the window. Light in the window means nobody rides past. The unwritten law of the frontier. The promise that said, if you're lost, if you're dying, if the storm has you come here and be saved. Jake stumbled up to the door, raised his fist to knock. The door opened before his knuckles touched wood. A woman stood there, dark hair in a practical braid, work-worn hands, eyes that swept over Jake, over his sons, over Rosie's limp body, and understood everything in a single glance. Inside, she said. Now, all of you. She didn't wait for an answer. Grabbed Jake's arm and pulled him through the doorway, then reached past him to haul Caleb and Eli in by their collars. The door slammed shut against the howling wind. Warmth. Jake had forgotten what warmth felt like. It wrapped around him like his mother's arms, like Hannah's arms, like Mercy made physical. The girl. The woman was already moving, clearing a space by the fire, pulling quilts from somewhere. How long has she been sick? 3 days. Jake's voice came out hoarse. Started coughing. Then the fever came. Doc in town said she needed medicine he didn't have. I was trying to get to Rock Springs. In this? The woman's head snapped toward him. Her eyes were sharp, angry. You brought a sick child into a blizzard. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. This was the wrong one. She took Rosie from Jake's arms. He let her, too exhausted to resist, and laid the girl gently on the quilts. Her hands moved over Rosie's body with quick precision, checking pulse, checking breathing, checking fever. She's burning up, the woman muttered. Lungs are congested, classic pneumonia. 3 days, you said? Yes, ma'am. Why'd you wait so long? I didn't... Jake's voice broke. I didn't know. She said she felt fine, said it was just a little cough. By the time you realized she was too sick to travel, but you traveled anyway. The woman stood, moved to a cabinet, started pulling out bottles and instruments. Men, you'd rather risk death than admit you need help. Ma'am, my name is Clara Whitmore, and you're lucky you found this cabin because your daughter would have been dead by morning otherwise. Jake felt his knees go weak. He grabbed the back of a chair to keep from falling. Can you save her? Clara turned, looked at him for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression. The anger didn't leave, but it made room for something else. Compassion, maybe, or recognition. I'm going to try, she said. I'm a doctor, trained at Women's Medical College in Philadelphia. Your daughter is very sick, but I've seen worse pull through. A doctor? Caleb's voice was sharp. You're a woman. Notice that, did you? Clara didn't look up from the medicine she was mixing. Your powers of observation are remarkable. I didn't mean... Sit down, boy. Warm up. There's coffee on the stove. She nodded toward the fire. Your brother looks half frozen. See to him. Caleb opened his mouth, probably to argue. Jake knew his son, but something in Clara's voice stopped him. An authority that didn't need to be loud to be absolute. He closed his mouth, went to Eli, started stripping off the younger boy's wet coat. You too, Clara said to Jake. Sit. You're swaying on your feet. I'm fine. You're not. You're hypothermic, exhausted, and running on fear. Sit down before you fall down. She paused. Please. Jake sat. Clara worked on Rosie with hands that never hesitated. She administered medicine from a small bottle, then another medicine from another bottle. Arranged the girl's head so her breathing came easier, piled quilts around her small body. The fever should break by morning, Clara said finally. "If the medicine works." "And if it doesn't?" Clara met his eyes. "Let's pray it does." Pray. The word hit Jake somewhere deep. He hadn't really prayed since Hannah died, had stood in church and mouthed the words, had bowed his head when the preacher said to bow, but his heart had been somewhere else, somewhere cold and empty and closed off from God. But tonight in that blizzard he'd prayed, and here he was. "Thank you," Jake said. His voice came out rough. "Thank you for taking us in, for helping her, for—" He stopped, didn't know how to finish. "Light in the window," Clara said simply. "That's the law out here. Someone needs help, you help them. Still, you didn't have to." "No," Clara's voice softened. "I didn't have to. I wanted to." They looked at each other for a moment. Jake saw something in Clara's eyes. Loneliness, maybe. The kind of loneliness that came from years alone, from nights with no one to talk to, from keeping a light burning in the window and wondering if anyone would ever come. "Pa!" Eli's voice broke the moment. "Pa, I'm hungry." Clara moved toward the stove. "I'll make something. You all need food." "Ma'am, Clara, you don't have to go to trouble. It's Christmas Eve." Clara glanced at him over her shoulder. "Even in Wyoming, people should eat on Christmas Eve." Christmas Eve. Jake had forgotten. He'd been trying to forget. Last Christmas had been unbearable, the empty chair where Hannah should have sat, the presents she would have made, that no one made, the boys trying not to cry and failing. "I forgot," Jake admitted. "I know." Clara's voice was gentle now. "Men usually do. After they lose their wives." Jake went still. "How did you know? You've got 3 children and no wedding ring. Your daughter calls for her mama in her fever, but you flinch every time she does. And you've got that look." "What look?" "The look of a man who's been surviving instead of living." Clara turned back to her cooking. "I know it well. I see it in my mirror every morning." Jake looked around the cabin for the first time. Really looked. Small but clean. Medical books on a shelf. Herbs drying by the window. A small pine branch in the corner. A modest acknowledgement of Christmas. 2 candles on the mantel. And on the wall, a photograph. Clara and a man, both young, both dressed in their best. A wedding portrait. "Your husband?" Jake asked. 5 years ago." Clara's voice didn't waver. "Typhoid. He was a doctor too. Caught it from a miner he was treating." "I'm sorry." "So am I." She stirred the pot on the stove. "Every single day." "How do you—" Jake stopped. Started again. "How do you keep going alone out here?" Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she pointed toward the windowsill, and Jake noticed for the first time a row of small carved birds. Each one different. Each one detailed and beautiful. "I carve," Clara said. "Every winter. 1 bird for every month I survive. Keeps my hands busy. Keeps my mind from going places it shouldn't go." Jake stood, walked to the windowsill, picked up one of the birds, a meadowlark, perfect down to the individual feathers. "These are beautiful. They're just birds." "No." Jake set the carving down carefully. "They're how you keep breathing. I understand that." Clara turned to look at him. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, recognition, understanding, the wordless knowledge of 2 people who'd lost everything and somehow kept waking up each morning anyway. "What's yours?" Clara asked. "Your version of carving birds." Jake thought about it. "Work," he said finally. "The ranch, the horses, getting up before dawn and working until after dark, so I'm too tired to think, too tired to remember." "Does it help?" "No. But it passes the time." Clara almost smiled. "That's the most honest thing anyone said to me in 5 years." "Pa." Eli had moved closer to Clara's medical cabinet, was staring at the bottles and instruments with wide eyes. "Pa, what's all this stuff?" Medicine, son. Doctor's tools. Real doctor tools. Eli looked at Clara with something like awe. You really know how to use all this? Every bit of it. Clara ladled stew into bowls. Took me 4 years to learn. 4 years? Eli's eyes went wider. That's almost as old as Rosie. It's a lot to learn. The human body is complicated. Could you teach me? The words tumbled out fast, like Eli had been holding them back. I mean, not everything. Just some stuff. I want to know how things work. I always want to know how things work. Clara looked at the boy. Something shifted in her face. You want to be a doctor someday? I don't know. Maybe. Is that dumb? That's the opposite of dumb. Clara handed him a bowl of stew. Eat this, and tomorrow, if your sister's better, I'll show you how a stethoscope works. Really? Really? Eli's face lit up the first real smile Jake had seen from his son in months. He took the stew and retreated to the fire, already eating. Thank you, Jake said quietly. He gestured vaguely. All of it. He's a smart boy, curious. The world needs more curious people. His mother was like that, always asking questions, always wanting to understand. She sounds like she was a good woman. She was. Jake's voice caught. She was the best woman I ever knew. And I wasn't there when she died. I was at the ranch dealing with a horse that had gone lame, and she went into labor early, and by the time I got back, he stopped, couldn't finish. It wasn't your fault, Clara said. Everyone says that. Because it's true. Women die in childbirth every day. There's nothing you could have done. I could have been there. I could have held her hand. I could have. Jake's voice broke completely. She died alone. My Hannah died alone, calling for me, and I wasn't there. Clara moved closer, close enough to touch though she didn't. My William died in my arms, she said quietly. I held his hand. I watched him take his last breath. And you know what? It didn't help. Not one bit. The grief was the same. The emptiness was the same. Being there doesn't make it hurt less. It just makes it different. Jake looked at her, saw the truth of what she was saying written in the lines around her eyes, in the set of her mouth, in the way she held herself like someone who'd learned to carry weight that should have broken her. How do you know that? He asked. How do you know being there doesn't help? Because I've spent 5 years wishing I hadn't been, wishing I'd gone to check on the horses instead, wishing the last thing I saw wasn't his face going slack. Clara's voice was steady, but her eyes were bright. At least you have good memories. At least your last memory of her isn't. She stopped, turned away, started fussing with the stove, though there was nothing that needed fussing with. Jake wanted to say something, wanted to offer comfort the way she'd offered it to him. But what comfort was there? What words could make any of this better? Pa. Caleb's voice quieter now. The boy had been listening. Pa, is Rosie going to be okay? Jake looked at his daughter. Her breathing was steadier than before. Some color had returned to her cheeks. The medicine was working. Doc Clara says the fever should break by morning. And then what? We go home? Home. The word hit Jake like a blow. That empty ranch house with Hannah's things still everywhere. Her apron on the hook, her sewing basket by the chair. The 4th plate he still set at the table sometimes, before remembering there was no one to use it. Weather's got to clear first, Jake said. Can't go nowhere in this storm. Storm should blow itself out by morning, Clara said. She was back to her brisk professional self. I'll check the wagon damage. Maybe the axle can be patched enough to get you to town. You'd do that? I told you. Light in the window. That means help with whatever's needed. Clara paused. Besides, it'll give me something to do. Something other than carving birds. Jake almost smiled. It felt strange on his face, like muscles he'd forgotten how to use. The meal was simple stew with potatoes and carrots and a bit of salt pork, but it was hot and good, and more than Jake had managed to make in months. The boys ate like they hadn't seen food in weeks, which given Jake's cooking might not be far from truth. "This is good," Eli said around a mouthful. "Real good." "Mind your manners," Jake said automatically. "No, he's right." Caleb had finished his bowl, was staring at the empty bottom like he wished there was more. "This is better than anything we've had since." He stopped, looked at his father, looked away. "Since your mother." Jake finished for him. "I know. I've been burning everything." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." Jake set down his own bowl. "I know I've been failing you boys. I know things have been hard. I'm trying to do better." "You ain't failing us, Pa." Eli's voice was quiet but fierce. "You're keeping us alive. That's what matters." "Your brother's right." Caleb's voice was reluctant, like the words were being dragged out of him. "You're doing your best. We know that." Jake looked at his sons, both of them looking back at him with expressions that broke his heart. Love and grief and worry, all tangled together. They were too young to carry this weight. Too young to be worrying about their father, when they should be worrying about nothing more than what game to play next. "I love you boys," Jake said. "You know that, right? No matter how bad things get, no matter how hard it is, I love you." "We know, Pa." Eli's voice was thick. "We love you too." Caleb didn't say anything, but he nodded. And for Caleb, that was enough. Later, after the boys had fallen asleep by the fire, Eli curled in a ball. Caleb sitting up with his back against the wall, still keeping watch, even in sleep. Jake found himself alone with Clara. She was sitting at her table, reading through papers by lamplight. Official-looking papers. A letter with a Denver postmark sat to the side, and even from across the room, Jake could see her jaw was tight. "Trouble?" he asked. Clara looked up sharply, saw where his eyes had gone, quickly turned the papers face down. "Nothing I can't handle." "You sure? Because that don't look like nothing." "I'm sure." Her voice had gone cold. Professional. The walls were back up. Jake knew he should let it go, knew it wasn't his business. But something about the set of her shoulders, the tightness in her voice, it reminded him of himself. Reminded him of all the times he'd said, "I'm fine," when he was anything but. "If there's something I can help with," there isn't. Clara stood abruptly. "Your daughter needs checking on. Excuse me." She moved to Rosie's side and Jake let her go. Whatever was in those papers, whatever trouble she was carrying, she wasn't ready to share it. He understood that. Some weights you had to carry alone until you were ready to set them down. Jake watched Clara check Rosie's pulse, her temperature, her breathing. Watched the gentle way she handled his daughter, the care in every movement. This woman had been alone for 5 years, had built walls high enough to keep out anything that might hurt her. But underneath those walls was something soft, something kind, something that reminded Jake of Hannah. He pushed the thought away. It felt like betrayal comparing this stranger to his wife. Hannah was gone, had been gone for 18 months, and no amount of loneliness was going to change that. "She's improving," Clara said without looking up. "Fever's down 1/2 degree. By morning she should be out of danger. Thank God. Thank medicine. Thanking." Clara stood wiping her hands on her apron. "God helps those who help themselves. Or so my mother used to say. My Hannah used to say the same thing." The words were out before Jake could stop them. Clara looked at him. Their eyes met. And again, that recognition passed between them, two people who'd lost everything, finding something like understanding in the most unlikely place. "Get some sleep," Clara said softly. "You'll need your strength tomorrow. Wagon won't fix itself." "What about you?" "I'll keep watch on Rosie, in case the fever spikes." "You need sleep too." I'll sleep when the storm ends." Clara almost smiled. "Don't worry about me, Jake Mercer. I've been taking care of myself for a long time." Jake wanted to argue, wanted to insist she rest, wanted to take over the watching, wanted to do something to repay the debt he was accumulating. But exhaustion was pulling at him, dragging him down, and Clara was right. He needed sleep. His children needed him strong. He settled by the fire close enough to feel its warmth, close enough to hear Rosie breathing. Closed his eyes. And dreamed of Hannah. She was standing in a field of snow. But she wasn't cold. She was smiling that soft smile he'd fallen in love with 20 years ago in a church social in Missouri. "You found her," Hannah said. "Found who?" "The one who'll save you." Hannah's smile widened. "I've been praying for this, Jake. Praying you'd find your way back to living." "Hannah, take care of our babies." Her voice was fading. "Let yourself be happy again. Promise me." "I promise." The words came out broken. "Hannah, I promise." "I love you," she whispered. "Always have. Always will. Now wake up." Jake woke to gray light and the sound of coughing. He sat up fast, heart pounding, but it wasn't the weak, wet coughing from before. This was stronger, healthier. The coughing of a little girl fighting her way back to life. "Rosie?" He scrambled to his daughter's side. Clara was already there, supporting Rosie's head, helping her through the coughing fit. When it passed, Rosie looked up at her father with fever-bright eyes that were nonetheless clearer than they'd been in days. "Papa." Her voice was a croak. "Where are we?" "Somewhere safe, baby girl." Jake took her hand, felt tears burning in his eyes. "Somewhere safe. The nice lady gave me medicine. It tasted bad." "I know, sweetheart, but it made you better." "Is it Christmas?" Rosie's eyes were already drooping, exhaustion pulling her back toward sleep. "Mama said Christmas was special." Jake's throat closed. He looked at Clara over his daughter's head, saw her watching them with an expression he couldn't read. "Yeah, baby," he managed. "It's Christmas. Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, Papa." Rosie's eyes closed. "Merry Christmas, nice lady." "Merry Christmas, Rosie," Clara said softly. And despite everything, despite the broken wagon and the dying storm and the long road still ahead, Jake Mercer felt something he hadn't felt in 18 months. Hope. Outside, the wind was dying. The storm was ending. But inside, Jake Mercer, something else was just beginning. The storm died sometime before noon. Jake woke to silence. Real silence, not the muffled roar of wind that had become background noise. He sat up slowly, muscles aching from sleeping on a hard floor, and looked toward the window. Sunlight. Actual sunlight, pale and thin, but real, streaming through glass that had been nothing but white darkness the night before. Storms passed. Clara's voice came from across the room. She was standing at the stove stirring something that smelled like heaven. Jake's stomach growled loud enough that she glanced over her shoulder with something that might have been a smile. "Hungry. Starving." Jake pushed himself to his feet. Crossed to where Rosie lay sleeping, touched her forehead. Cool. The fever had broken completely. "She's better." "Told you she would be." Clara ladled porridge into bowls. "Children are resilient. More resilient than we give them credit for." "Papa." Jake turned. Rosie's eyes were open, clearer than they'd been in days. She looked around the unfamiliar cabin with the confused curiosity of a child waking up somewhere new. "Where's home?" "We're at Miss Clara's house, sweetheart. Remember, she made you better." Rosie's eyes found Clara, studied her with the unfiltered directness only children could manage. "You're pretty." Clara's hands stilled on the ladle. Something flickered across her face, surprise maybe, or the shadow of old grief. "Thank you, Rosie." "Mama was pretty too." Rosie's voice was matter of fact. "She's in heaven now. Papa says she watches us from the stars." I'm sure she does. Clara's voice was gentle, careful. Would you like some breakfast? Yes, please. Rosie tried to sit up, struggled. Papa, I'm tired. That's the sickness, baby. You need to rest more. But I don't want to rest. I want to see the pretty birds. Jake followed his daughter's gaze to the windowsill, to Clara's carved birds lined up in their patient row. Rosie was staring at them like they were the most magical things she'd ever seen. Can I hold one? Rosie asked. Please, I'll be careful. Clara crossed the room, picked up the meadowlark, the one Jake had admired last night, and brought it to Rosie's bedside. Knelt down so she was at eye level with the little girl. This one's my favorite, Clara said. Do you know what kind of bird it is? Rosie shook her head. It's a meadowlark. They sing the most beautiful songs in springtime. Your mama probably heard them growing up. Mama liked birds. Rosie's small fingers traced the carved feathers with reverent care. She used to point at them and tell us their names. I forgot most of them. That's okay. I can teach you new ones. You can. Rosie's eyes went wide. You know all the birds? Most of them. I've had a lot of time to learn. Jake watched them, his daughter, and this stranger who wasn't a stranger anymore. Something was happening, something he couldn't name and wasn't sure he wanted to. Pa! Caleb's voice rough with sleep. The boy was sitting up by the fire watching the same scene Jake was watching. But where Jake saw something tender, Caleb's eyes held suspicion. Wariness. Pa, we should check the wagon. After breakfast? I can go now. Don't need to eat first. You'll eat first. Jake's voice left no room for argument. Then we'll check the wagon together. Caleb's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Just accepted the bowl Clara handed him and ate in silence, his eyes never quite leaving her face. Eli woke last, stumbling to the table with his hair sticking up in 12 directions. He ate 3 bowls of porridge without pausing for breath, then immediately started asking Clara questions. How does the stethoscope work? You said you'd show me. Can I see it? What's that bottle for? What about that one? Why do you have so many books? Eli. Jake's voice carried a warning. Give Miss Clara some peace. It's all right. Clara was almost smiling. I don't mind questions. Most people out here don't ask enough of them. She retrieved the stethoscope from her medical cabinet, showed Eli how to place it against his own chest. Hear that? That's your heart. It's so loud. Eli's face lit up with wonder. Pa, listen to this. Jake let his son press the instrument to his chest. Listened to his own heartbeat thudding in his ears, steady and strong and alive. When he looked up, Clara was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. Strong heart, she said quietly. Has to be. Got 3 children depending on it. After breakfast, Jake and Caleb went out to check the wagon. The damage was worse than Jake had hoped. The axle was cracked clean through, not just split but shattered. The wheel had come off completely, was buried somewhere under a drift. Even if they found it, the axle couldn't be patched. They'd need a blacksmith. They'd need town. 15 miles, Caleb said. His breath hung white in the cold air. We could walk it. With your sister still recovering. In this cold, she could stay here, with... Caleb stopped. His face hardened. Never mind. Say what you were going to say. Nothing, Pa. Caleb. The boy turned. Looked at his father with eyes that were too old, too angry, too full of things he wasn't saying. She could stay here with that woman. You and me and Eli could walk to town, get help, come back. That woman has a name. I know what her name is. Then use it. Fine. Clara. Caleb spat the word like it tasted bad. Rosie could stay with Clara. We could walk to town. And leave your sister with a stranger. She ain't a stranger no more, is she? Caleb's voice went sharp. Not the way you've been looking at her. Jake felt the words like a slap. Watch yourself, boy. I'm just saying what I see. What you see is wrong. Is it? Caleb stepped closer. Pa, I ain't blind. And I ain't stupid. I see how you look at her. I see how she looks at you. And I'm telling you right now, Mama ain't been gone 2 years. It ain't right. Nothing is happening between me and Miss Whitmore. Not yet. Not ever. Jake grabbed his son's shoulder, forced the boy to meet his eyes. Listen to me. Your mother was the love of my life. She will always be the love of my life. No one is ever going to replace her. Not Clara. Not anyone. You understand? Caleb held his gaze for a long moment. Then his shoulders slumped slightly. Some of the anger drained from his face, replaced by something sadder, something more honest. I just don't want to forget her, Pa. I don't want to forget what she looked like, what she sounded like. Every day it gets harder to remember. And if you find someone new... I'm not finding anyone new. But if you did, would we have to forget her completely? Jake pulled his son into a hug, held him tight the way he should have been holding him for 18 months, the way he'd been too lost in his own grief to manage. We will never forget your mama, Jake said into his son's hair. Never. She's part of us. She's in your eyes, and Eli's smile, and Rosie's laugh. She's in everything good about this family. Finding someone new wouldn't erase that. Nothing could erase that. You promise? I promise. They stood there in the snow, father and son, for a long moment. Then Caleb pulled back, wiped his eyes with his sleeve. We still need to get to town, he said. His voice was steadier now, calmer. We do, but not today, not with your sister still weak. Tomorrow. We'll see how she is. Jake looked back at the cabin, smoke rising from the chimney, warm light in the windows. For now we stay. We rest. We let Rosie get her strength back. And then we go home. And then we go home. They walked back to the cabin together. Jake told himself he'd meant every word, told himself nothing was happening with Clara. Nothing could happen. Nothing would happen. She was a stranger who'd shown them kindness in a storm. That was all. That was everything. But when he stepped through the door and saw Clara teaching Rosie how to hold a spoon of medicine, saw his daughter laughing at something Clara said, saw Eli sitting at Clara's feet with a medical book open on his lap, something in Jake's chest cracked. Something that had been frozen for 18 months began very slowly to thaw. The day passed quietly. Clara insisted Rosie stay in bed, but she let the boys explore the cabin, let them ask questions, let them exist in her space like they belonged there. Jake watched from his chair by the fire, unable to look away, unable to stop cataloging the small moments. Eli asking Clara about bone structure. Clara patiently explaining using her own hands as models. Rosie asking for another bird to hold. Clara bringing her a different one each hour, naming each bird, telling stories about where she'd seen them in the wild. Even Caleb suspicious. Caleb grudgingly accepting a second helping of stew and muttering something that might have been thank you. You're good with them, Jake said when the children were occupied elsewhere. The way you explain things, the patience. Clara shrugged, kept her eyes on the sock she was darning. I like children. Always have. You never had your own... The question hung in the air. Jake knew immediately he'd overstepped, saw it in the way Clara's hands stilled, the way her shoulders tightened. I'm sorry. That's not my business. No, it's all right. Clara set down her darning, met his eyes. William and I tried, for 3 years. It never happened. She paused. The doctor said there was something wrong with me, something that couldn't be fixed. Clara, it doesn't matter now. William's gone. I've made my peace with it. But her voice said otherwise. Her eyes said otherwise. For what it's worth, Jake said slowly, any child would be lucky to have you as their mother. Clara looked at him sharply. Something flickered in her expression. Hope maybe, or the fear of hope. That's a kind thing to say. It's the truth." They sat in silence for a moment. The fire crackled. Outside, wind whispered against the walls, gentler now, no longer trying to kill. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said finally. "Anything." "Last night, you saw the papers on my table, the letter." Jake nodded slowly. "I saw them." "Did you read them?" "No, ma'am, that's your business." Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood cross to the table, picked up the letter, held it for a moment like it weighed 100 pounds. "My husband had a cousin, Fletcher Ashworth. He's a lawyer in Denver." Clara's voice was flat, controlled. "2 months after William died, Fletcher showed up at my door. Said William owed him money. Said if I couldn't pay, he'd take the homestead." "Did William owe him money?" "I don't know. Maybe. William handled the finances. I trusted him." Clara's jaw tightened. "But even if he did, Fletcher wants more than money. He wants this land, and he's been finding ways to take it from me piece by piece." "What kind of ways?" "Legal ways. Challenges to my claim. Questions about whether a woman can hold property alone. Last month he filed a new motion. Says the original homestead papers were improperly filed." She set the letter down. "The hearing's in 2 weeks. If I lose, you lose everything. I lose everything." Jake looked at this woman, this doctor, this survivor, this person who'd carved birds through 5 winters alone and kept a light burning in her window for anyone who needed it. Looked at the fear she was trying to hide. The exhaustion. The weight of fighting alone for so long. "Is there anything I can do?" Clara smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "You've got your own problems, Jake Mercer. Your own family to worry about. This isn't your fight." "Maybe not. But you saved my daughter's life. That makes your problems my problems." "That's not how it works." "That's exactly how it works." Jake leaned forward. "You need help. I'm offering. That's frontier law too, isn't it? You help someone, they help you back." Clara studied him for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression, the walls coming down just slightly, just for a moment. "You really mean that?" "I really do." Before Clara could respond, Rosie's voice rang out from across the cabin. "Papa! Papa, come look!" Jake crossed to his daughter's bedside. Rosie was sitting up now, stronger than she'd been all day, holding one of Clara's carved birds in her hands. "Miss Clara said I could keep this one." Rosie's face was glowing with joy. "She made it just for me." Jake looked at Clara, who had followed him over. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." Clara's voice was soft. "It's Christmas. Children should have presents on Christmas." "But these are yours. You made them. I made them to survive. Now they can help someone else survive." Clara knelt beside Rosie, adjusted the quilt around the little girl's shoulders. "You take good care of that bird, Rosie Mercer. And when you look at it, you remember even in the worst storms there's always a light somewhere. You just have to keep walking until you find it." Rosie threw her arms around Clara's neck, held on tight. "Thank you, Miss Clara. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." Clara hugged her back. Jake saw her close her eyes, saw her hold his daughter, like Rosie was something precious, something she'd been waiting for her whole life. And in that moment, Jake Mercer knew he was in trouble. Deep, dangerous, impossible trouble. The second day dawned bright and cold. Rosie was well enough to sit at the table for breakfast. Eli had memorized the names of 12 different bones. Even Caleb seemed to have softened slightly, accepting Clara's food without the suspicious glances of the day before. "The weather's holding," Clara said as she cleared the breakfast dishes. "If you want to try for town today, would be the day." Jake looked at his children. At Rosie, still pale but smiling. At Eli, clutching a medical book Clara had loaned him. At Caleb, watching his father with careful eyes. "What do you think, boys, ready to head home?" Eli's face fell. "Already, but I haven't finished learning about the respiratory system." "We can't impose on Miss Clara forever, son." "But, Eli, Jake's voice was gentle but firm. We have a ranch to get back to. Animals that need tending. A home that needs us. Your father's right, Clara said. Her voice was carefully neutral, professional. The walls were back up higher than before. You've been here 2 days. That's longer than most. Most people leave that fast, Eli asked. Most people leave as soon as the weather clears. Clara was wiping down the table, not looking at any of them. That's how it works. Storm brings them in. Clear skies take them away. Something in her voice made Jake's chest tight. That acceptance. That resignation. Like she'd learned long ago not to hope for anything different. We're grateful for everything you've done, Jake said. If there's any way to repay you, there isn't. Clara finally looked at him. Her expression was closed, distant. You survived. Your daughter's healthy. That's payment enough. Clara. I'll pack some food for your journey, and medicine for Rosie in case the fever returns. She was already moving toward her supplies, already creating distance. Town's 15 miles east. There's a blacksmith named Henderson. Tell him Clara sent you. He'll fix your axle fair. Jake watched her pack the supplies, watched her move around the cabin with brisk efficiency, gathering things, organizing things, preparing them to leave. She'd done this before he realized, watched people go, learned not to ask them to stay. I don't want to go. Rosie's voice was small. I like it here. I like Miss Clara. I know, sweetheart. But we have to. Why do we have to go? Why can't we stay? Jake didn't have an answer. Not one that would make sense to a 5-year-old. Not one that made sense to him. Because we have a home, Rosie. This feels more like home. The words were quiet, devastating. This feels like when Mama was alive. The cabin went silent. Caleb's head snapped toward his sister. Eli's eyes went wide. Clara's hands stilled on the food she was packing. Rosie, Jake started. I'm not saying Miss Clara is Mama. Rosie's voice was patient, like she was explaining something obvious to a slow adult. I know Mama's in heaven, but this place feels warm the way our house used to feel warm. Before. One word that contained 18 months of grief, of silence, of a house that had become a tomb. Jake looked at Clara. She was staring at Rosie with an expression that broke his heart, hope and fear and desperate longing all tangled together. We have to go, Jake said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. That's final. He turned away, started gathering their things. Couldn't look at his daughter's face. Couldn't look at Clara's. The preparations for leaving took less time than Jake wanted. Coats and hats and scarves, the food Clara had packed, the medicine for Rosie. Eli's borrowed book reluctantly returned. Caleb's quiet relief. Rosie's silent tears. Thank you, Jake said at the door. For everything. You're welcome. Clara's voice was steady. Her eyes were not. Safe travels, Jake Mercer. Take care of those children. I will. He should have walked away. Should have stepped through that door and not looked back. Should have taken his children home and forgotten about this woman, this cabin, this strange Christmas that had broken something open in his chest. Instead, he stood there, looking at her, watching the light from the window paint gold across her face. Clara, don't. Her voice cracked. Please, just go. Jake went. They walked out into the snow, all 4 of them. Rosie held tight to Jake's hand, clutching her carved bird in the other. Eli dragged his feet. Caleb walked ahead, shoulders hunched, not looking back. At the edge of the property, Jake stopped, turned around one last time. Clara stood in the doorway watching them go. A figure in a rectangle of warm light getting smaller with every step they took. Rosie waved. Clara waved back. Then Jake turned his face toward the east, toward town, toward home, and kept walking. He didn't look back again. The walk to town took 4 hours. 4 hours of trudging through knee-deep snow, of carrying Rosie when she got too tired to walk, of listening to Eli's questions gradually fade into exhausted silence. 4 hours of thinking about Clara, about that look on her face when they left, about the way Rosie had said this feels more like home. 4 hours of knowing somewhere deep in his gut that he'd made a mistake. But what could he do? Go back. Say what he barely knew her. 2 days in a cabin during a storm didn't mean anything. Didn't give him the right to what Jake didn't know. That was the problem. He didn't know what he wanted, what he was feeling, what any of this meant. He just knew that with every step away from that cabin, something in his chest felt more and more wrong. They reached town as the sun was setting. Found Henderson, the blacksmith, explained about the wagon. Henderson said he could have it fixed in 2 days if Jake could pay. Jake could pay barely. The boarding house had 2 rooms available. Jake took both. Put the children to bed. Sat by the window looking west toward a cabin he couldn't see, toward a light that was probably still burning in a window. "Pa," Caleb's voice quiet in the darkness. "Go to sleep, son." "I can't." Caleb crossed the room, sat down across from his father. "I keep thinking about what Rosie said. Rosie's 5. She doesn't understand." "She understands more than you think." Caleb's voice was different now, less angry, more thoughtful. "Pa, I've been watching you since Mama died. You ain't really smiled in 18 months. Not until we got to Clara's cabin." "Caleb, I'm not saying you should go back, I'm just saying." The boy stopped, started again. "I didn't like her at first. I thought she was trying to take Mama's place, but she wasn't. She was just being kind. And we—" His voice cracked. "We need kindness, Pa. We've been so lonely." Jake stared at his son, at this 11-year-old boy who'd been carrying grown-up grief on shoulders that weren't ready for it. "You're right," Jake said quietly. "We have been lonely. So what are we going to do about it?" Jake didn't answer. Didn't know how to answer. But later that night, lying in the dark listening to his children breathe, he thought about Clara alone in her cabin. Thought about the letter from Denver. Thought about the hearing in 2 weeks that might take everything from her. Thought about a little girl's voice saying this feels more like home. And Jake Mercer, who'd been surviving instead of living for 18 months, started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, survival wasn't enough anymore. 2 weeks. That's how long Jake lasted. 2 weeks of going through the motions at the ranch. 2 weeks of burning breakfast and forgetting to mend fences and staring west toward a cabin he couldn't see. 2 weeks of watching his children grow quieter and smaller and more like the ghosts they'd been before the storm. Henderson had fixed the wagon good as new. Jake had paid the man, loaded up his family, and driven home. Back to the ranch. Back to Hannah's things still hanging on their hooks. Back to the empty chair at the table and the silence that filled every room like something solid. Back to surviving. Rosie stopped talking first. Not completely, she still answered when spoken to, still said please and thank you. Still went through the motions of being a living child. But the spark was gone. The brightness that had returned in Clara's cabin faded like a candle running out of wick. She stopped playing with her carved bird. Just held it. Stared at it for hours without moving. "Rosie, honey." Jake knelt beside her on the 3rd day home. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, Papa." "You can tell me." "There's nothing to tell." Her voice was flat, empty. "I'm fine." She wasn't fine. Jake knew she wasn't fine, but he didn't know how to fix it. Eli stopped asking questions. The boy who'd wanted to learn everything about everything went quiet and still spending hours staring out windows at nothing. He'd returned Clara's medical book when they left, but Jake caught him drawing pictures of bones on scraps of paper, labeling them with names he'd memorized. "You miss her," Jake said one evening. "Miss Clara." Eli shrugged. Didn't look up from his drawing. "It's okay to miss her, son. She was kind to us. Then why did we leave? Jake didn't have an answer. Caleb was the only one who seemed normal. The boy threw himself into ranch work with fierce determination, mending fences, feeding horses, chopping wood, until his hands blistered. He worked like he was trying to outrun something, like if he stayed busy enough he wouldn't have to think. Jake recognized the behavior. He'd been doing the same thing for 18 months. "You're pushing yourself too hard," Jake told him on the 5th day. "Work needs doing. Not at the cost of your health." "I'm fine, Pa." Caleb swung the axe, split a log clean in two. "Just keeping busy." "There's keeping busy and there's running away." Caleb stopped, set down the axe, looked at his father with eyes that were too old, too tired, too full of things neither of them wanted to say. "Ain't that what we're all doing, running away?" Jake didn't answer. Couldn't answer. The truth was too sharp to speak out loud. The second week was worse. Rosie stopped eating. Not completely, she'd take a few bites when Jake insisted, but she was losing weight, getting thinner. Her face took on a hollow look that reminded Jake too much of the night in the blizzard when he'd thought he was going to lose her. "You need to eat, sweetheart." "I'm not hungry." "Just a few more bites, please." "I said I'm not hungry." Rosie pushed her plate away. "The food tastes wrong." "Wrong how?" "Just wrong." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Miss Clara's food didn't taste wrong." Jake felt the words like a knife between his ribs. That night he burned dinner again, stood at the stove watching the beans turn to charcoal, and didn't move to save them. What was the point? He couldn't cook, couldn't feed his children properly, couldn't keep them healthy or happy or alive in any way that mattered. Hannah had done all of that. Hannah had been the one who made this house a home. Without her, it was just walls and a roof and 3 children slowly fading away. "Pa?" Eli's voice from the doorway. "Pa, something's burning." "I know." "Aren't you going to?" "I know, Eli." Jake turned off the stove, scraped the ruined beans into the trash, stood there with his hands braced against the counter, breathing hard, trying to hold himself together. "I'll make something else," he said finally. "Give me a minute." "It's okay, Pa. I'm not that hungry anyway." None of them were hungry anymore. None of them were anything anymore. The explosion came on the 10th day. Jake had burned breakfast again, and Caleb had eaten it without complaint again, and Rosie had pushed her plate away without touching it again. Everything was the same as it had been for 10 days. The same silence, the same emptiness, the same slow suffocation. Then Rosie spoke. "I want to go back." Jake looked up from his coffee. "What?" "I want to go back to Miss Clara's house. I want to live there. I don't want to be here anymore." "Rosie, we can't just... Why not?" Her voice rose, sharpened, the first real emotion she'd shown in days. "Why can't we... She liked us. We liked her. Why can't we go back?" "Because this is our home. This isn't home." Rosie was crying now, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Home is where Mama was. Home is where things were warm and good and happy. This place is just, it's just where we wait to die." The words hit Jake like bullets. He sat frozen, unable to speak, unable to move, unable to do anything but stare at his 5-year-old daughter as she said everything he'd been feeling for 18 months. "Rosie," Caleb's voice soft with alarm. "Don't tell me to be quiet." Rosie turned on her brother. "You think the same thing I know you do. I heard you tell Eli that you wished we'd stayed. I heard you say, Miss Clara made you feel like Mama was almost back." Caleb's face went white. "Rosie, you weren't supposed to hear that." "But I did. And you're a liar if you say it isn't true." "I didn't say it wasn't true. You just what? You just don't want to hurt Papa's feelings." Rosie laughed. It was an ugly sound too bitter for a child her age. "Papa doesn't have feelings anymore. Papa's been dead inside since Mama died. He just keeps walking around pretending to be alive. Rosie, that's enough. Jake found his voice. It came out harsh. Wrong. It's not enough. Nothing's enough. Nothing's ever going to be enough until you stop being such a coward. The word hung in the air. Coward. From his 5-year-old daughter. Jake stood up. His chair scraped back against the floor. His hands were shaking. His vision had gone strange, dark at the edges, bright in the center. Go to your room. No. Rosie, go to your room, now. Make me. Jake moved toward her. He didn't know what he was going to do, grab her arm, carry her upstairs, something, but before he could reach her, Caleb was between them. Pa, stop. Get out of my way, Caleb. No. Caleb's voice was steady. His eyes were not. She's right, Pa. About everything. She's saying what we've all been thinking. You can't punish her for telling the truth. The truth? Jake's voice cracked. The truth is that I'm doing my best. The truth is that I'm trying to keep this family together. The truth is that your mother died, and I don't know how to do this without her. The words exploded out of him. 18 months of grief and fear and failure, all pouring out at once. I don't know how to cook. I don't know how to make you happy. I don't know how to be a father without her here to help me. Every single day I wake up and I think today's the day I finally fail them completely. Today's the day I lose them the way I lost her. Jake was crying. He hadn't cried since Hannah's funeral. Had locked all of it away, buried it deep, refused to let it out, because fathers had to be strong, and children needed stability, and grief was something you carried alone in the dark. But now it was pouring out of him. All of it, everything. I'm sorry. His voice broke completely. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I can't be what you need. I'm sorry I'm not enough. I'm sorry your mama died and left you with me instead of someone who knows what they're doing. Pa. Eli's voice small and scared. Pa, we don't want someone else. We want you. But I'm broken, Eli. Can't you see that I'm broken and I don't know how to fix myself? Then let someone help. Jake looked at his middle son, at this 8-year-old boy with his mother's eyes and his own stubborn jaw. What? Let someone help Pa. You don't have to do everything alone. Miss Clara, she helped us. She could help us more if you let her. Eli. I know you're scared. Eli's voice was quiet but certain. I know you think if you love someone new, it means you're forgetting Mama. But that's not true. Mama would want us to be happy. She wouldn't want us to be like this, sad all the time and eating burned food and pretending everything's okay when it isn't. Jake stared at his son. At this child who understood things no child should have to understand. When did you get so smart? I've been paying attention. Eli almost smiled. That's what I do. I watch. I learn. And I've learned that you're killing yourself trying to do this alone. And you don't have to. The kitchen was silent. Jake stood there, tears drying on his cheeks, looking at his 3 children. Rosie with her angry eyes and her devastating honesty. Caleb with his protective stance and his too old understanding. Eli with his quiet wisdom and his mother's gentle heart. I don't know what to do, Jake admitted. I really don't. Yes, you do. Rosie's voice was softer now, still fierce but with love underneath. You know exactly what to do. You're just scared to do it. Before Jake could respond, there was a knock at the door. Silas Thornton stood on the porch, his weathered face grim. Jake's neighbor had been a friend since before the war, had stood beside Jake when they buried Hannah, had helped keep the ranch running through the worst months of grief. Jake, we need to talk. Silas, what's wrong? It's about that woman, the doctor, the one west of here. Jake's heart stopped. Clara? What about her? Silas looked past Jake at the children, then back at Jake. His expression said this wasn't a conversation for young ears. Boys, take your sister upstairs. But Pa, now Caleb. The children went. Jake stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind him. "Tell me." "There's a man in town, lawyer from Denver, name's Fletcher Ashworth." Silas's voice was low, urgent. "He's been asking questions about Clara Whitmore, about her land, about whether she's got anyone who'd stand up for her." "What kind of questions?" "The kind that come before trouble." Silas met Jake's eyes. "Word is, he's got papers. Claims she owes money, a lot of money. Claims if she can't pay the land defaults to him." "That's not how it works. A widow's homestead is protected. Not if the original claim was filed wrong. And according to Ashworth, it was." Silas paused. "Jake, I've seen this before. Back in Kansas before the war. Men like Ashworth, they don't care about the law. They care about getting what they want. And what he wants is that land." "Why, there's nothing special about that land." "There's a creek on it. Only reliable water source for 30 miles. Whoever controls that creek controls every ranch in the valley." Silas's jaw tightened. "He's been buying up land all around her. She's the last holdout, the last piece he needs." Jake felt cold. Not from the winter air, from something deeper. Something that felt like fear. "When's the hearing?" 3 days. County courthouse in Rock Springs. 3 days. Clara had said 2 weeks when they'd left, but that was 10 days ago. "Does she know?" "I sent word. Don't know if she got it." Silas stepped closer. "Jake, I know this ain't your fight, but that woman saved your daughter's life, and from what I hear, she ain't got nobody else." "What am I supposed to do? I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about land claims or—" "You're a man with a voice and a reputation. You fought in the war. People respect you." Silas's hand landed on Jake's shoulder. "Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes just showing up is enough." Jake stood there, heart pounding, mind racing. Clara alone in that cabin. Clara facing a man who wanted to take everything from her. Clara with no one to stand beside her. And here he was, 10 miles away doing nothing. Because he was scared. Because loving someone new felt like betraying Hannah. Because survival was easier than living, and loneliness was safer than hope. Because he was exactly as Rosie had said, a coward. "I have to go." The words were out before Jake knew he was going to say them. "Now. Now. Tonight. She needs to know—" Jake stopped, started again. "She needs to know she's not alone." Silas nodded. Something like approval crossed his weathered face. "I'll watch the children." "I can't ask you to." "You didn't ask. I offered." Silas smiled slightly. "Go, Jake. Do what you should have done 2 weeks ago." Jake turned toward the door, then stopped, turned back. "Silas, what if I'm too late?" "Then at least you tried." Silas's voice was gentle. "That's more than most men manage. That's more than you've managed in 18 months. Jake went inside, found his children waiting in the kitchen, their faces tense with worry. "I have to go somewhere," Jake said. "Silas is going to stay with you." "Where are you going?" Caleb's voice was sharp. "To help Miss Clara. She's in trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that needs someone to stand beside her." Jake knelt down, looked at each of his children in turn. "I might be gone for a few days. I need you to be brave. Can you do that?" Rosie's face transformed. The anger and grief that had been eating at her for 2 weeks melted away, replaced by something that looked like hope. "You're going to help her?" "Really?" "I'm going to try." "And then what?" Eli asked. "After you help her?" Jake took a deep breath. Let it out slowly. Made a decision that had been building for 10 days, maybe longer. "Then I'm going to ask her to come back with me. If she'll have us." Rosie threw her arms around his neck, hugged him so tight it hurt. "Thank you, Papa. Thank you, thank you, thank you." "Don't thank me yet, sweetheart. She might say no." "She won't." Rosie pulled back. Her eyes were bright with tears, but she was smiling. She loves us, Papa. I could tell. She loves us, and we love her, and that's what matters. Love. The word Jake had been avoiding for 2 weeks. For 18 months. For his whole life since Hannah died. Yeah, he said quietly. Yeah, I guess that is what matters. He saddled his horse in record time. The sun was already setting, painting the sky orange and pink. It would be dangerous to ride at night. The temperature would drop. The trails would be hard to see. Jake didn't care. He mounted up, turned the horse west, looked back at his children standing on the porch, Silas's solid presence behind them. I love you, he called. All of you, remember that. We know, Pa, Caleb's voice carried across the distance. Now go get her. Jake rode. The temperature dropped as the sun disappeared. Stars came out cold and bright, lighting his way across the frozen landscape. His breath hung in clouds before his face. His fingers went numb inside his gloves. He kept riding. Halfway there, the horse stumbled. Jake dismounted, checked the animal's leg, found nothing wrong. Just exhaustion. The horse needed rest. Jake didn't have time for rest. He walked leading the horse, pushing through snow that reached his knees in some places. His legs burned. His lungs ached. His shoulder, the one with Confederate lead still buried somewhere deep, screamed with every step. He kept walking. Sometime after midnight he saw it. A faint golden glow in the distance. A light in a window. Clara's cabin. She was still there. The land hadn't been taken yet. There was still time. Jake pushed forward. Faster now. Almost running. The horse stumbled along behind him, too tired to do more than follow. He reached the cabin as the moon was setting, climbed the steps, raised his hand to knock. The door opened before his fist touched wood. Clara stood there. In the lamplight, Jake could see she'd been crying. Her eyes were red. Her face was pale. She looked like someone who'd given up. Jake. Her voice was raw with disbelief. How did you? I heard about the hearing, about Fletcher Ashworth. Who told you? Doesn't matter. I'm here. Jake stepped forward. Clara, you're not facing this alone. Not anymore. Clara stared at him. Something cracked in her expression, the walls she'd built, the defenses she'd maintained, all of it crumbling at once. You came back. Her voice broke. I thought I never expected. I should have come back 2 weeks ago. I should never have left. Jake took another step, close enough to touch her now, close enough to see every tear track on her face. I was scared, Clara. Scared of what I was feeling. Scared of betraying Hannah's memory. Scared of letting someone new into my heart. And now? Now I'm more scared of living without you than I am of loving again. Clara made a sound half sob, half laugh. That's either the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me or the most terrifying. Probably both. Jake's voice was rough. I'm not good at this, Clara. I've been dead inside for 18 months. I don't know how to be what you need. I don't know if I can be a good husband or father or any of the things a man's supposed to be. I'm not asking you to be perfect, Jake. Then what are you asking? Clara reached out, took his hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was strong. I'm asking you to try. That's all. Just try. And let me try with you. Jake pulled her into his arms, held her against his chest, felt her heart beating against his. Two broken people, finding something like wholeness in each other. The hearing's in 3 days, Clara said into his shoulder. I know. Ashworth has lawyers, resources, connections. I know. We might lose. Jake pulled back, looked into her eyes. We might, but we won't lose alone. And whatever happens after, whatever comes next, we face it together. Clara smiled. It was the first real smile he'd seen from her, the first one that reached her eyes. Together, she repeated. I like the sound of that. They stood there in the doorway holding each other as the first light of dawn broke over the mountains. A new day, a new beginning. 3 days until the hearing. 3 days to prepare for a fight that could take everything. But for the first time in 18 months, Jake Mercer felt something other than grief. He felt ready. The next 3 days passed like a fever dream. Jake sent word to Silas to bring the children. They arrived the following afternoon, tumbling out of the wagon with faces bright with hope and fear and everything in between. Rosie ran to Clara before her feet fully touched the ground. Threw herself into the woman's arms like she was coming home after years away instead of weeks. "I knew Papa would come back for you," Rosie said into Clara's shoulder. "I knew it. I told Caleb. I told Eli. They didn't believe me, but I knew." Clara held her tight, looked at Jake over the little girl's head with eyes that were wet but smiling. "You were right, sweetheart. Your papa's a brave man." "He's not brave." Rosie pulled back, her face serious. "He's just scared of the right things now instead of the wrong things." Jake laughed. It came out rough, rusty from disuse, but real. "When did you get so wise, little one?" "I've always been wise, Papa. You just weren't listening." Eli approached Clara with more caution than his sister, but no less longing. He stopped a few feet away, hands shoved in his pockets, trying to look casual and failing completely. "I finished drawing all the bones," he said. "The ones you taught me. I can show you if you want." "I want." Clara released Rosie, opened her arms to Eli. "I want very much." The boy hesitated for just a moment. Then he was in her arms too, holding on like he was afraid she'd disappear. Caleb hung back, the oldest, the most cautious, the one who'd built walls almost as high as Jake's own. "Caleb." Clara's voice was gentle. "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to." Caleb's jaw was tight. His eyes were wet. I need you to know something first." "What's that?" "I didn't like you at first. I thought—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I thought you were trying to take my mama's place. I thought if we let you in, we'd have to forget her. And I can't do that. I won't do that. She was my mama, and I love her, and I won't forget her." "I would never ask you to forget her." Clara stepped toward him slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. "Your mother loved you. That love doesn't go away just because she's gone. It stays with you forever. Nothing I do, nothing anyone does can take that from you. You promise?" "I promise." Caleb broke. The walls he'd built crumbled all at once. He stepped forward, let Clara pull him into her arms, and cried the way he hadn't cried since the day they buried Hannah. Jake watched his children with this woman who'd saved them in more ways than one. Watched them hold each other. Watched something broken begin to heal. "Thank you," he said quietly. Clara looked up at him, smiled through her own tears. "Don't thank me yet. We've still got a fight ahead of us." The preparation for the hearing consumed every waking moment. Clara showed Jake the papers, all of them. The original homestead claim her husband had filed. The letters from Fletcher Ashworth demanding payment. The legal motions challenging her right to the land. "He's been at this for 3 years," Clara explained, spreading documents across her kitchen table. "Ever since William died. At first it was just letters, then lawsuits, now this." Jake studied the papers. He wasn't a lawyer, but he'd learned to read contracts working for the railroad before the war. Learned to spot the tricks men used to cheat other men out of what was rightfully theirs. This debt he's claiming. Do you have any record of William borrowing money? "William handled all our finances. I trusted him." "But you don't have proof either way." "No." Clara's voice was tired. "I don't." Jake picked up another document. Read it twice. Read it a third time. "Clara, this motion challenging your homestead claim. It says the original filing was improper because William listed the wrong section number. That's what Ashworth claims. But look here." Jake pointed at a line in the filing. "The section number matches the county surveyor's records. I checked when I was in town. Henderson showed me. Clara looked at the paper. At Jake. Back at the paper. You checked. Before I rode out here. Stopped at the county office, asked to see the survey maps. Jake set the document down. Clara, there's nothing wrong with your filing. Ashworth is lying. Can you prove that? The records can prove it, if we can get the judge to look at them. If Ashworth hasn't. Jake stopped. A cold feeling settled in his stomach. Hasn't what? If he hasn't already gotten to them, changed them, made them say what he needs them to say. Clara's face went pale. He wouldn't. Men like Ashworth do whatever they have to do, whatever they can get away with. Jake stood, started pacing. We need witnesses. People who knew William. People who can testify that he never borrowed money from Fletcher Ashworth. Most of William's friends moved away after he died, or died themselves. What about patients? People you've helped? Dozens, but they're scattered all over the territory. We can't get them to Rock Springs in 3 days. Then we get whoever we can. We show the judge that you're not just some woman alone on a claim. We show him you're part of this community, that people know you, trust you, need you. Clara looked at him. Something shifted in her expression, hope maybe, or the beginning of it. You really think that'll be enough? I don't know. Jake's voice was honest, but it's what we've got. They rode to town the next morning. All of them, Jake, Clara, and all 3 children. The wagon creaked over frozen ground breath, hanging white in the cold air. Rock Springs was busy for a winter day. Word of the hearing had spread. People wanted to see the show The Denver Lawyer versus the Widow Doctor. Entertainment was scarce in Wyoming territory. Jake felt eyes on them as they walked down the main street. Curious eyes, hostile eyes, sympathetic eyes. All of them watching, judging, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. Jake Mercer. The voice came from behind them. Jake turned. A man stood on the boardwalk, tall, well-dressed. The kind of clothes you'd see in a Denver ballroom, not a Wyoming mining town. His face was smooth, almost handsome, but his eyes were cold, calculating. Fletcher Ashworth. The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I've heard about you. Civil War hero. Rancher. Widower. His gaze slid to Clara. And now apparently protector of lost causes. Miss Whitmore's cause isn't lost. Miss Whitmore's cause is hopeless. Ashworth's voice was pleasant, conversational, like they were discussing the weather instead of a woman's entire life. The law is clear. The debt is documented. The filing is flawed. In 3 days, that land becomes mine. The filing isn't flawed and you know it. Do I? Ashworth's smile widened. That's for the judge to decide, isn't it? It is. And when he sees the county surveyor's original records... Ah, the original records. Ashworth pulled out a pocket watch, checked the time, put it away. Tragic thing. Fire at the county office last night. Destroyed most of the older documents. Survey maps, property records. Such a loss. Jake felt his blood go cold. You burned the records. I was in Denver last night. Dozens of witnesses. Terrible tragedy, though. Just terrible. Ashworth tipped his hat. I'll see you in court, Mr. Mercer. Miss Whitmore. Enjoy your last few days on that land. He walked away. Jake watched him go, hands clenched into fists, rage burning in his chest. Jake? Clara's voice was small, scared. If the records are gone, then we find another way. What other way? He's destroyed everything. He's one man, Clara. One man against everyone he's tried to hurt. Jake turned to face her. How many people in this valley depend on that water source? How many ranchers would lose everything if Ashworth controlled the creek? Dozens, maybe more. Then we talk to them, all of them. We remind them what's at stake. We build a case so strong that no judge can ignore it, no matter how many records get burned. Clara looked at him, at the determination in his face. at the fire in his eyes. You really believe we can win? I believe we have to try. I believe that giving up isn't an option. Jake took her hands. I lost Hannah because I wasn't there when she needed me. I'm not losing you too. Not without a fight. The next 2 days were a blur of riding and talking and pleading. Jake visited every ranch in the valley, knocked on every door, told every rancher the same thing: Fletcher Ashworth wants to control the water. If Clara loses her land, you're next. Some listened, some didn't. Some slammed doors in his face. But enough listened. Enough cared. Enough were willing to stand up. Silas Thornton was the first to commit. I've known Jake Mercer since before the war. And I've known Clara Whitmore since she saved my wife's life when the twins came early. If those two say something's wrong, something's wrong. I'll testify. Agnes Pemberton was harder. The old widow had been suspicious of Clara from the start. Suspicious of any woman who lived alone, who practiced medicine, who didn't follow the rules proper women were supposed to follow. Please, Mrs. Pemberton. Clara stood on the woman's porch hat in hands pride swallowed whole. I know you don't approve of me. I know you think I'm too independent, too unladylike, too everything a woman shouldn't be. But that land is all I have. That work is all I have. If I lose it, you'll what? Go back east where you belong. I don't belong back east. I belong here. This is my home. These people are my people. Clara's voice cracked. I've delivered babies in this valley. I've set broken bones and treated fevers and sat with the dying when no one else would. I'm not asking you to approve of me, Mrs. Pemberton. I'm asking you to remember that. Agnes Pemberton was silent for a long moment. Then she sighed, opened her door wider. Come inside, Dr. Whitmore. I suppose we should talk. The morning of the hearing arrived cold and clear. Jake dressed in his best clothes, the suit he'd worn to Hannah's funeral, the only suit he owned. Clara wore a simple dark dress, practical and dignified. The children wore their Sunday best, scrubbed and combed and silent with nervous energy. The courthouse was packed. Every seat filled, people standing along the walls, spilling out into the hallway. More people than Jake had ever seen in Rock Springs. They came. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. They actually came. Jake looked around the room, saw Silas Thornton near the front, Agnes Pemberton beside him, Henderson the blacksmith, the Morrison family whose youngest Clara had saved from scarlet fever, the Andersons, the Petersons, the Coles, ranchers and miners and shopkeepers, all of them present, all of them watching, all of them waiting to see what would happen. All rise for the Honorable Judge William Marcus. The judge entered, old, stern, face like weathered leather. He'd been on the bench for 20 years, had seen every kind of case the frontier could produce. Be seated. Judge Marcus surveyed the crowd with sharp eyes. I see this matter has attracted some attention. Your Honor. Fletcher Ashworth rose, smooth, confident. This is a simple debt collection case. I'm not sure why so many people felt the need to. I'll decide what's simple and what isn't, Mr. Ashworth. The judge's voice was cold. Now, present your case. Ashworth presented well. Jake had to admit that. The lawyer laid out his evidence with precision. The debt documents, the challenged homestead filing the witnesses who testified that William Whitmore had borrowed money and never repaid it. The debt is clear, Your Honor. The filing is flawed. Under territorial law, the land should revert to the creditor. And the county records that might prove otherwise. Ashworth spread his hands. A tragic loss. Your Honor, the fire was most unfortunate, but we must work with the evidence we have. Indeed. Judge Marcus turned to Clara. Miss Whitmore, your response. Clara stood. Her hands were shaking. Jake reached out, touched her arm, tried to give her strength. Your Honor, my husband died 5 years ago. In all that time, I never received any notification of this debt. No letters, no demands. Nothing until Fletcher Ashworth showed up at my door 2 months after William's death, claiming I owed him money. That's because I was giving you time to grieve. Ashworth's voice was solicitous. I'm not a monster, Your Honor. I simply want what's owed to me. What's owed to you is nothing. Clara's voice found strength. Because my husband never borrowed money from you. He didn't even know you. You appeared out of nowhere with forged documents trying to steal land that my husband and I built with our own hands. Forged? Ashworth's eyebrows rose. That's a serious accusation, Miss Whitmore. It's the truth. Can you prove it? The courtroom went silent. Everyone knew Clara couldn't prove it. The records were destroyed. The witnesses were scattered. She had nothing but her word against his. I can. The voice came from the back of the courtroom. Everyone turned. Agnes Pemberton stood. In her hands was a bundle of papers yellowed with age. I can prove it, Your Honor. And I have evidence that will prove Fletcher Ashworth is a fraud and a thief. The courtroom exploded in murmurs. Judge Marcus banged his gavel. Order in this court. He pointed at Agnes. Mrs. Pemberton, approach the bench. Agnes walked forward. Her footsteps were steady despite her age. When she reached the judge's bench, she handed him the papers. My husband was the county clerk before he died, Your Honor. He kept copies of every important document that crossed his desk, personal copies stored in our home. She looked at Ashworth. Including the original survey maps, the original property records, and a letter from a bank in Denver stating that William Whitmore's accounts were settled in full at the time of his death. Ashworth's face went white. Those documents are authentic, Mr. Ashworth. My husband's signature is on every one. Agnes turned back to the judge. The section number on Clara Whitmore's homestead claim is correct. It matches the original survey exactly. And there's no record of any debt to Fletcher Ashworth because that debt doesn't exist. It never existed. Judge Marcus studied the papers. His expression grew darker with every page. Mr. Ashworth, these documents appear to directly contradict your evidence. They're forgeries, Your Honor. Obviously forgeries. That woman has been conspiring with Miss Whitmore to... That woman is the widow of the most respected clerk this county ever had. A man known for his honesty and his meticulous record-keeping. The judge set down the papers. I've seen enough. Your Honor, I must protest. You must be silent, Mr. Ashworth. Judge Marcus's voice could have frozen water. In 20 years on this bench, I've seen a lot of men try to cheat widows and orphans out of their rightful property. I've never seen anyone do it quite so brazenly or quite so stupidly. This is outrageous. You demand nothing. The judge stood. Based on the evidence presented, I find the following Clara Whitmore's homestead claim is valid. The alleged debt to Fletcher Ashworth is a fabrication, and Mr. Ashworth himself will be held for investigation on charges of fraud, arson, and attempted theft. You can't do this. I just did. Judge Marcus nodded to the sheriff. Take him into custody. 2 deputies moved forward. Ashworth tried to run, tried to push past them, but they grabbed his arms and forced them behind his back. This isn't over, Ashworth shouted as they dragged him toward the door. I have friends, powerful friends. You'll all regret this. I doubt that very much. The judge banged his gavel one final time. Case dismissed. Miss Whitmore, your land is secure. Court is adjourned. The courtroom erupted. People were shouting, cheering, crowding around Clara and Jake. Silas was pumping Jake's hand. Henderson was wiping his eyes. Even Agnes Pemberton was smiling, accepting thanks with gruff dignity. You did it. Jake pulled Clara into his arms, not caring who saw. You won. We won. Clara was crying and laughing at the same time. We won. Rosie pushed through the crowd, Eli and Caleb right behind her. All 3 children threw themselves at Clara and Jake, creating a tangle of arms and tears and joy. Does this mean we can stay? Rosie's voice was muffled against Clara's dress. Does this mean we're a family now? Jake looked at Clara. She looked back at him. I think, Jake said slowly, that depends on Clara. Depends on me. Clara's voice was incredulous. Jake Mercer, are you asking what I think you're asking? I reckon I am. Jake got down on one knee, right there in the courtroom, surrounded by half the population of Rock Springs. Clara Whitmore, I know this is fast. I know we've only known each other a few weeks, but those weeks have been more alive than the 18 months before them. You saved my daughter. You saved my sons. You saved me. And I don't want to spend another day wondering what might have been. Jake, marry me, Clara. Be a mother to my children. Be a partner in my life. Be the reason I wake up every morning with something to look forward to instead of something to survive. The courtroom had gone silent. Everyone watching. Everyone waiting. Clara looked at the man kneeling before her, at the children clustered around him, at the life he was offering, complicated and messy and full of a grief that might never fully heal. Yes. The word came out broken and beautiful. Yes, Jake Mercer. I'll marry you. The cheering that followed shook the walls. Later, after the congratulations and the handshakes and the tears, they walked out of the courthouse together. All 5 of them. A family. Reverend Gray met them on the steps. The old minister had been in the courtroom, had watched everything unfold. I don't suppose you'd want to wait, he said with a slight smile. Make proper arrangements. Send announcements. Jake looked at Clara. What do you think? I think I've waited long enough. Clara's voice was steady. Sure. I think we all have. Then let's not wait another minute. Reverend Gray gestured toward the church. I believe I have some time in my schedule. The wedding was small, simple, perfect. They stood before the altar, Jake and Clara, with Caleb, Eli, and Rosie as witnesses. The church was cold, the light fading toward evening, but none of that mattered. Dearly beloved, Reverend Gray began, we are gathered here to witness the joining of Jacob Elias Mercer and Clara Josephine Whitmore in holy matrimony. Jake held Clara's hands, felt them trembling, felt his own trembling in return. But we're also here to witness something more. The Reverend's voice was gentle. The healing of 2 hearts that have known too much loss. The creation of a family from broken pieces. The courage it takes to love again when love has cost so much. Rosie sniffled. Eli took her hand. Jacob, do you take Clara to be your wife, to love and honor her in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live? I do. Jake's voice was rough with emotion. With everything I am and everything I have, I do. Clara, do you take Jacob to be your husband, to love and honor him in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live? I do. Clara's tears fell freely now. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Reverend Gray smiled. You may kiss your bride. Jake pulled Clara close, kissed her gently, tenderly, with all the hope and fear and love that had been building since that first night in the storm. We're married, Clara whispered against his lips. We're married. Papa. Rosie's voice broke the moment. Does this mean Miss Clara is our mama now? Jake looked at his daughter, at all his children, at Clara, who was watching them with love written across her face. What do you think, Clara? You ready to be a mama? I've been ready my whole life. Clara knelt down, opened her arms. Come here, all of you. The children rushed forward. Eli reached her first, then Rosie, then, after a moment's hesitation, Caleb. They held each other in front of the altar, crying and laughing, and holding on like they'd never let go. Jake watched them. His family. Broken and mended and stronger for the breaking. Hannah, he thought. I hope you can see this. I hope you know I'll never forget you. But I'm finally doing what you asked. I'm finally living again. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he could almost hear her voice. About time, Jake Mercer. About time. They walked out of the church as the last light faded from the sky. Stars were appearing one by one, cold and bright and eternal. Where do we go now? Eli asked. Your cabin or our ranch? Jake looked at Clara. Clara looked back. Both, Jake said. We'll figure it out together. That's what families do. Together. Rosie tested the word. I like that. Me too, sweetheart. Jake lifted his daughter onto his hip, took Clara's hand with his free one. Me too. They walked toward the wagon, all 5 of them, their breath hanging white in the cold air. Behind them, the church bell began to ring someone's idea of celebration, of blessing, of welcome. Ahead of them, the road stretched long and dark. But for the first time in 18 months, Jake Mercer wasn't afraid of the journey, wasn't afraid of what waited in the darkness. Because he wasn't walking alone anymore. None of them were. 1 year later. The first snow of winter fell on Christmas Eve, soft and gentle. Nothing like the killing blizzard that had changed everything 12 months before. Jake stood at the window of the ranch house, their ranch house now his and Clara's and the children's, watching the flakes drift down like blessings from a sky gone white. Papa! Rosie's voice came from behind him. Papa, Mama Clara says dinner's almost ready. Mama Clara. The words still made Jake's chest tight even after a year of hearing them. Rosie had started using them the morning after the wedding, had said them so naturally that everyone else followed. Mama Clara. Like she'd always been there, like she'd always belonged. Tell her I'll be right there, sweetheart. She also says to stop staring out the window like a lovesick fool and come set the table. Jake laughed. That sounded like Clara. Did she use those exact words? Maybe not exact. Rosie grinned. But close enough. Jake turned from the window, scooped his daughter up, felt her wrap her arms around his neck. 6 years old now, growing so fast. Healthy and strong and happy in ways she hadn't been that terrible night when she'd stopped breathing in his arms. You know what today is? Jake asked. Christmas Eve. What else? Rosie thought about it. Her face scrunched up the way it always did when she was concentrating. Then her eyes went wide. The anniversary. It's been a whole year since the storm. A whole year since we found Mama Clara. A whole year since everything got better. Rosie hugged him tighter. I'm glad you got lost, Papa. I'm glad the wagon broke. I'm glad for everything that went wrong. That's a strange thing to be glad about. No, it isn't. Rosie pulled back to look at him with eyes that were too wise for 6 years old. Because all the wrong things led to the right things. That's how life works. Miss Clara taught me that. Mama Clara. Mama Clara. Rosie smiled. See? Even you're still learning. Jake carried her to the kitchen, where chaos reigned in the best possible way. Clara stood at the stove, stirring something that smelled like heaven. Eli sat at the table with a medical book open in front of him. A real one this time, one Clara had bought him for his birthday, muttering Latin terms under his breath. Caleb was bringing in firewood, his arms full snow melting in his hair. About time. Clara glanced over her shoulder. I was starting to think you'd frozen to the window. Just watching the snow. Clara's voice softened. Remembering. Always. They looked at each other for a moment. That look that had become their language, the one that said everything words couldn't. I love you. I'm grateful. I can't believe we found each other. Table's not going to set itself, Clara said finally. But she was smiling. The past year had been hard. Jake wouldn't pretend otherwise. Blending 2 lives, 2 households, 2 sets of grief and hope and fear, none of it had been easy. There had been fights, misunderstandings, Moments when Jake wondered if he'd made a mistake, if it was too soon, if he'd asked too much of Clara and his children. But there had been more good than bad. So much more. Clara had moved into the ranch house within a week of the wedding. Her cabin became a medical clinic, a proper one with a sign and regular hours and a steady stream of patients from all over the valley. She rode out 3 or 4 days a week, sometimes more, treating the sick and injured who couldn't make it to town. The children had adjusted faster than Jake expected. Rosie attached herself to Clara like a shadow, following her everywhere, asking endless questions about herbs and healing and how bodies worked. Eli threw himself into learning with the kind of passion that reminded Jake of Hannah, the same hungry curiosity, the same need to understand everything. Caleb had been the hardest, the oldest, the most wounded, the one who remembered Hannah most clearly and felt her loss most deeply. He'd kept his distance from Clara for the first few months, polite but cold, accepting her presence without embracing it. The breakthrough had come in spring. Jake had been in the barn working on a broken harness when he heard shouting from the house. He'd run inside to find Caleb on the floor of the kitchen, clutching his hand, blood everywhere. What happened? Knife slipped. Caleb's face was white with pain. I was trying to help with dinner, and the knife slipped and... Clara was already there, already kneeling beside him, already examining the wound with steady hands. It's deep, she said calmly. But it missed the tendon. You're lucky. Doesn't feel lucky. Caleb's voice was tight. It hurts. I know. I need to stitch it closed. Can you be brave for me? Caleb looked at her. Really looked, maybe for the first time since she'd come into their lives. Will it hurt? Yes. But I'll be as gentle as I can. And I'll be right here the whole time. I won't leave you. Something shifted in Caleb's face. Something old and wounded and afraid. Promise? I promise. Clara's voice was soft. I'm not going anywhere, Caleb. Not ever. She'd stitched the wound with careful precision, talking to him the whole time, distracting him with stories about her training in Philadelphia, about the first time she'd had to stitch a wound, and how scared she'd been about the patient who'd fainted before she even started. When it was over, when the bandage was wrapped, and the blood cleaned up and the crisis passed, Caleb had looked at Clara with new eyes. Thank you, he'd said quietly, for not leaving. I told you, I'm not going anywhere. I know. Caleb had paused, swallowed hard. I know you're not my real mother, I know that, but maybe you could be my other mother. The one who's here, the one who stays. Clara had cried. Jake had cried. Even Caleb had cried, though he'd deny it later. That was the night Caleb started calling her Mama Clara, too. Now, a year after the storm, they sat around the dinner table like a real family. Because they were a real family. Not the one Jake had started with, not the one he'd imagined, but real nonetheless. Forged in crisis and tempered by time and held together by something stronger than blood. Love, simple as that. Complicated as that. I want to make a toast. Eli raised his glass of apple cider. To the worst blizzard in Wyoming history. Eli, Clara started. No, hear me out. The boy, 9 years old now, serious and thoughtful, and so much like his mother, looked around the table. A year ago tonight we almost died. Papa almost lost Rosie. We almost froze to death in the snow. Everything went wrong. This is a terrible toast, Caleb muttered. I'm not done. Eli silenced his brother with a look. Everything went wrong. But because everything went wrong, we found this house. We found Mama Clara. We found our family. He raised his glass higher. So here's to everything going wrong. Because sometimes that's the only way for things to go right. They clinked glasses, drank, laughed at the strangeness of toasting disaster. That was actually pretty good, Caleb admitted. I've been practicing. Eli grinned. In my head, for weeks. After dinner, Clara brought out the gifts. Small things. They didn't have much money, not with the ranch barely breaking even, and the clinic running on goodwill more than payment. But thoughtful things, personal things. For Eli, a new set of medical instruments. Real ones, not toys. Scalpels and forceps and a proper stethoscope engraved with his initials. Mama Clara. Eli's voice was barely a whisper. This is... You've been studying hard. You deserve proper tools. Clara touched his face gently. You're going to be a fine doctor someday, Eli Mercer. I believe that with all my heart. For Caleb, a leather journal. Bound in dark brown hide, the pages thick and creamy. For your thoughts, Clara explained. I noticed you've been writing, in scraps, on margins. I thought you might like somewhere proper to put your words. Caleb held the journal like it was made of gold. You noticed? I notice everything about my children. The word my children hung in the air. Caleb blinked rapidly, cleared his throat. Thank you, Mama. No Clara attached. Just Mama, for the first time. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She pulled Caleb into a hug and held on tight. For Rosie, a new carved bird. But not just any bird, a whole family of birds. A large one and 3 small ones, all perched together on a single branch. That's us, Rosie breathed. That's our family. I made it over the summer, when no one was watching. Clara smiled through her tears. I wanted you to have something that shows what we've become. It's perfect. Rosie clutched the carving to her chest. It's the most perfect thing in the whole world. Jake watched his children with their gifts, watched Clara watching them, and felt his heart swell until it hurt. Your turn. Clara handed him a small wrapped package. Open it. Jake unwrapped the paper carefully. Inside was a pocket watch. Old worn, clearly, not new, but polished until it gleamed. It was William's, Clara said softly. The only thing I kept after he died. I thought... She paused. I thought maybe it was time for it to belong to someone else, to mark new time instead of old. Jake opened the watch. Inside the cover, an inscription, for time well spent and love well given. Clara, his voice broke. I can't accept this. This was your husband's. And now it's my husband's again. Clara put her hands over his, closed the watch between their palms. William would have liked you, Jake. He would have wanted this. He would have wanted me to be happy. Are you happy? Happier than I ever thought I'd be again. Clara leaned forward, kissed him softly. Happier than I knew was possible. Later, after the children were in bed, Jake and Clara sat on the porch. The snow had stopped. Stars blazed overhead, cold and brilliant. A lamp burned in the window behind them, casting golden light across the white-covered ground. A year, Clara said softly. It doesn't feel like a year. Feels like both forever and no time at all. That's a very profound observation, Mr. Mercer. I have my moments, Mrs. Mercer. They sat in comfortable silence. The kind of silence that didn't need filling. The kind that came from knowing someone so well that words were optional. I found something today, Clara said finally, when I was going through Hannah's things. Jake tensed. They'd been through Hannah's belongings months ago, sorting what to keep, what to give away, what to store for the children. He'd thought they were done. What did you find? Clara reached into her pocket, pulled out an envelope yellowed with age. It was in the lining of her hope chest. Hidden. I think she meant for you to find it. Jake took the envelope. His name was written on the front in Hannah's handwriting. The sight of it, those familiar curves and loops, hit him like a physical blow. I haven't opened it, Clara said. It's yours. Private. Will you stay while I read it? If you want me to. I want you to. Jake opened the envelope. Inside was a single page covered in Hannah's neat script. He held it up to the lamplight and began to read. My dearest Jake, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I don't know when or how, but I know that someday this letter will find its way to you, and I need you to know some things before that day comes. First, I love you. I have loved you since the day we met at that church social in Missouri, when you were too shy to ask me to dance, and I had to ask you instead. I have loved you through war and peace through plenty, and want through every joy and sorrow this life has brought us. That love doesn't end with my death. It goes on. It will always go on. Second, I know you, Jake Mercer. I know that when I'm gone, you'll try to freeze yourself in place. You'll keep my things where I left them. You'll set my plate at the table. You'll pretend that if you hold still enough, I might come back. But I won't come back, my love. And you can't stop living just because I have. Third, and most important, let yourself love again. I mean it. Whatever guilt you're feeling, whatever sense that loving someone new would betray my memory, let it go. The greatest gift you can give me is a full life. The greatest honor to my memory is happiness, not grief. I don't want to be a shrine, Jake. I want to be a foundation, something you build on, not something you're buried under. There will be someone. I believe that. Someone who will love you and the children the way we deserve to be loved. When you find her, and you will find her, don't let fear hold you back. Don't let loyalty to a ghost keep you from embracing the living. You have so much love to give. Don't waste it on mourning. Give it to someone who can receive it. Give it to our children who need it. Give it to yourself because Lord knows you've never been good at that. I have to go now. The baby's coming soon and I need to rest. But I wanted you to have these words, just in case. Just in case the worst happens, and I don't get to say them out loud. I love you, Jake. Forever and always. Now go live the life you were meant to live. Your Hannah. Jake read the letter 3 times. The words blurred and cleared and blurred again as tears streamed down his face. Jake. Clara's voice was worried. What does it say? He handed her the letter. Watched her read it. Watched her eyes go wide, then soft, then wet. She knew, Clara whispered. She knew you'd need permission. She always knew me better than I knew myself. She sounds like an amazing woman. She was. Jake took the letter back, held it against his chest. And she was right. About everything. About freezing in place. About keeping her things like a shrine. About needing permission to move on. Jake. I spent 18 months trying to honor her memory by staying stuck, by refusing to heal, by punishing myself and our children for something that wasn't anyone's fault. Jake's voice cracked. And all along this letter was waiting. All along she was trying to tell me what she told me on her deathbed. What she wrote in the letter I found before, what she knew I needed to hear again and again until I finally listened. What's that? That living isn't a betrayal. That loving again isn't a sin. That the best way to honor the dead is to live fully, not die slowly. Jake looked at Clara, his wife, his partner, his second chance. She's the one who brought me to you, Clara. I know that now. Her and that storm and that light in your window. It was all her somehow, making sure I found what I needed. Clara moved closer, took his hand. Do you really believe that? I have to believe it. Because the alternative is that everything is just chance and chaos, and nothing means anything, and I can't live in a world like that. Jake squeezed her fingers. I'd rather believe that Hannah is somewhere watching over us, glad that we found each other, glad that her children have a mother again, glad that I finally learned to live instead of just survive. Then believe it. Clara's voice was fierce. Believe it with everything you have, because I believe it too. I believe William sent me that storm, sent me you, gave me the family I thought I'd never have. She touched his face, turned it toward her. We're not betraying them, Jake. We're honoring them. We're proving that love doesn't end with death. It just changes. It grows. It finds new ways to bloom. Jake kissed her, long and slow and full of everything he couldn't say. Merry Christmas, Clara Mercer. Merry Christmas, Jake Mercer. They sat together as the night grew deeper, as the stars wheeled overhead, as the lamp burned steady in the window. Two people who'd lost everything, and somehow found more than they'd ever imagined. The next morning, Christmas Day, 1 year exactly since the storm, Jake woke to the sound of children laughing. He lay still for a moment listening. Rosie's high giggle, Eli's quieter chuckle, Caleb's voice warm and teasing in a way it hadn't been for so long, and underneath it all, Clara's laugh, rich and full and real. Jake got out of bed, dressed quickly, walked to the kitchen where chaos had erupted in the best possible way. Rosie was covered in flour. Eli had batter on his nose. Caleb was trying to flip a pancake and failing spectacularly. Clara stood in the middle of it all, directing traffic like a general on a battlefield. "Papa." Rosie spotted him first. "We're making breakfast Mama Clara is teaching us." "I can see that." Jake surveyed the disaster zone. "Should I be worried?" "Very worried." Clara grinned at him. "These three are hopeless in the kitchen." "We are not," Eli protested. "I flipped one perfectly." 1 out of 12, Caleb pointed out. "That's not exactly a success rate." "It's better than yours." "Boys," Clara's voice cut through the argument. "Less fighting, more cooking. We've got a lot of mouths to feed." Jake moved to help, taking over pancake flipping duties from Caleb. They worked together, all 5 of them, bumping elbows and stealing bites and making a mess that would take hours to clean up. It was perfect. Absolutely perfect. After breakfast, they gathered in the living room. The tree Jake had cut down, smaller than he'd wanted, but the best he could find, stood in the corner, decorated with paper chains and dried berries, and Clara's carved birds hanging from the branches. "Can we open presents now?" Rosie was vibrating with excitement. "Please, please, please, please." "One at a time," Clara said. "Youngest first." Rosie tore into her packages with abandon. Eli opened his with careful precision. Caleb took his time, savoring each one. Jake watched them, these children who'd been so broken a year ago, who'd forgotten how to laugh and hope and dream, who'd been surviving instead of living just like their father. Now look at them. "Pa," Caleb's voice broke into his thoughts. "We have something for you, from all of us. You already gave me gifts. This is different." Caleb looked at his siblings, some silent communication passing between them. "This is from all of us together. We've been working on it for months." Eli produced a package from behind the tree, large and flat, wrapped in newspaper. "We made it ourselves," Rosie said. "Well, Caleb made most of it, but we helped." Jake took the package, unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a wooden frame, hand-carved with delicate skill. And inside the frame, Jake's breath caught. A drawing. Not just any drawing. A family portrait rendered in charcoal and chalk with remarkable skill. Jake and Clara in the center. Caleb on one side, Eli on the other. Rosie in front. All of them together. All of them family. And in the corner, smaller but unmistakable Hannah. Drawn from memory, from photographs, from love. Watching over them with a soft smile. "Caleb drew it," Eli explained. "He's been working on it since summer." "I wanted to include Mama," Caleb said quietly. "The real Mama. Because she's still part of our family, even if she's not here. She'll always be part of our family." Jake couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only stare at the drawing, at his children, at his wife, at Hannah's face, looking down at them with what could only be approval. "Do you like it?" Rosie's voice was anxious. "We wanted you to like it." "Like it?" Jake's voice came out broken. "Rosie, I love it. I love it more than I can say." He pulled all 3 children into his arms, held them tight, felt Clara's hand on his back, warm and steady. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for understanding. Thank you for remembering her. Thank you for loving me enough to know what I needed." "We're your family, Pa." Caleb's voice was muffled against Jake's shoulder. "That's what families do." They stayed like that for a long time. 5 people tangled together in an embrace that said everything words couldn't. Finally, Clara spoke. "I think we should hang it over the fireplace, where everyone can see it, where Hannah can watch over all of us." Jake nodded. couldn't manage more than that. They hung the portrait together, all 5 of them lifting it into place, adjusting it until it was perfect. Hannah's drawn eyes looked down at them, gentle and loving and present in a way that felt like a gift. "Merry Christmas, Mama," Rosie said softly, looking up at the portrait. "I hope you're happy in heaven. I hope you can see us. I hope you know we're okay now." "She knows, sweetheart." Jake put his arm around Clara, pulled her close. "She knows." That evening, as the sun set and the first stars appeared, the family sat together by the fire. Clara read aloud from a book of Christmas stories. The children listened with rapt attention, even Caleb, who usually pretended to be too old for such things. Jake watched them, his family, his heart, his reason for getting up every morning, and thought about the journey that had brought them here. A storm that should have killed them. A light in a window that saved them. A woman who taught them how to live again. A love that didn't replace what they'd lost, but grew alongside it, stronger for the breaking, deeper for the healing. "Papa," Rosie's voice sleepy now. "Papa, can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart." "Are you happy?" Jake looked at Clara, who was watching him with soft eyes. Looked at his sons, who were listening for his answer. Looked at his daughter, who was asking the question that mattered most. "Yes, Rosie." His voice was steady. "Sure. I'm happy. Really, truly happy. Not just pretending. Really, truly happy. Not just pretending." Rosie smiled, snuggled deeper into his side. "Good. Because I'm happy too. And I was worried that maybe you weren't because you're so quiet sometimes, and I thought maybe you were still sad about Mama, and I didn't want you to be sad anymore." "I'll always be a little sad about your mother," Jake admitted. "That's how love works. When you love someone that much, a part of you will always miss them. But being sad about what you've lost doesn't mean you can't be happy about what you have. You can feel both things at the same time. That's what I've learned this year. That's what Mama Clara taught me. You can be sad and happy at the same time. You can be anything and anything at the same time. Scared and brave. Lonely and loved. Broken and whole." Jake kissed the top of her head. "Life isn't just one thing, sweetheart. It's all the things all at once, forever changing and forever staying the same." "That's confusing." "It is. But it's also beautiful." Rosie was quiet for a moment. Then, "Papa, I think the storm was a blessing." "A blessing. Like in church, when something bad happens but something good comes from it." She yawned. "The storm was bad, but it gave us Mama Clara. So really it was a blessing in disguise." Jake looked at Clara. She was crying silently, tears tracking down her cheeks. "Yeah, sweetheart," Jake said softly. "I think you're right. The storm was a blessing." Outside, snow began to fall again, gentle, soft, nothing like the blizzard of a year ago. Inside, the fire crackled. The children slept. Clara leaned against Jake's shoulder, her breathing slow and peaceful. And on the mantel, Hannah's portrait watched over them all, a reminder that love doesn't end with death, that family isn't just blood, that sometimes the worst storms lead to the safest harbors. Jake closed his eyes, let himself feel it all. The grief and the joy, the loss and the gain, the ending that had become a beginning. A year ago, he'd been lost in a blizzard with his children, sure they were going to die. Now he was home, really home. Not just surviving, but living. Not just breathing, but loving. Not just existing, but thriving. The storm had taken everything. The light in the window had given it back, and Jake Mercer, widower, father, husband, again had finally learned the lesson his first wife had tried to teach him, the lesson his second wife had shown him, the lesson his children had lived out loud every single day. That love was not a betrayal of the dead, but a gift to the living. That grief and joy could exist in the same heart. That family was not about blood, but about choice, about showing up, about staying. And that sometimes, the worst blizzard of your life could lead you straight to something greater than home. It could lead you to family. It could lead you to healing. It could lead you at last to love.